WolfPunch.
Alright, welcome everyone to our inaugural episode of Tales from the Pack.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fucking
So
badass
excited.
name.
Yeah. Good job with that one.
More excited about the name than anything else. But no, this is where we're going to go back and look at older films that, not the big new Marvel, fancy-dancy, stupid shit. But yeah, older movies that we all really like, or movies that we like and then make Kemp watch, would be much more accurate. And then just talk about what we like about them, what still holds up.
Yeah. Today, it's me, Kyle Miller, Michael Kemp,
I'm here to learn.
and of course, Dan Hines.
Hi. Yeah, we're here to talk about the first two Alien films.
Yes, this is part one of our three-parter on the Alien franchise. I am
Similar to our Jumanji one, right?
Shut up. I'm very excited about this. I've been wanting to talk about Alien and Aliens pretty much since we started doing a podcast.
Yeah.
And these are legitimately two of my favorite movies. I know that that's not a super unique thing to say for anybody who's really into movies, but it's just the truth. I love them both so much, and I'm happy to be doing this. So I guess we'll start with part one.
Yeah.
Alien, the first of the franchise.
The best one, some might say.
A lot of people do feel that way, and there's nothing wrong with it. You, Michael, did not.
No.
Um,
I'm more of a Prometheus kind of guy for those out there listening. So everyone just turned off the podcast.
I was about to say, I'm not ready to unplug this fucking microphone right now.
It's not worth giving you an outlet to talk about these things. But yeah, so Alien, for anyone who doesn't know, and I can't believe you wouldn't, it's the 1979 horror film directed by Ridley Scott about like a spaceship that catches a beacon signal on an alien planet, and they go on this ship and they find a dead alien, and there's an egg, and it gets on John Hurt, like a facehugger busts out of it, gets on John Hurt's face, and then they take him back to the ship, and an alien busts out of his chest and
Fucking spoilers and shit.
Well, spoilers and shit. Sorry if you don't know about the movie from 1979. But I mean, how do you not?
Yeah, if you haven't seen the Alien movies, do that. If you haven't seen them in a while or just saw them on TV back in the day, sit down and give them a rewatch, especially the first two, because they are damn fine made films and in a lot of ways really hold up that you just would not expect, especially with all the practical effects and whatnot.
I was telling you the other day where it's like if Alien came out this month, it would be my favorite movie of the year. I would be like, nothing's going to beat this.
Yeah, I wish I could just go back in time where I knew nothing about this franchise and just watch it with completely fresh eyes, because so much stuff that happens in this you don't expect at all. And it's kind of unfortunate for me because, I grew up, I think I saw, Aliens on TV as a kid, censored and stuff, and that's kind of, what I always associated the franchise with. And I think I might have seen the first Alien, bits and parts and clips here and there. It wasn't until, years later that I saw all of it, in its entirety, and it was like, wow, this movie's fucking slow, and, this isn't what I was expecting. And it's a very slow-paced, grungy, methodical horror film that...
Bored Michael.
Yeah, no. don't say that. That's not true. Because for perspective, when I was growing up, my introduction to the Alien franchise was Alien versus Predator.
Jesus Christ.
That gem of a film, which at the time I liked, but upon seeing it in my adult life was garbage. So I associate it with that and in my opinion, just that 90s grungy, Sam Keith, Todd McFarlane, Spawn-esque, art style that I'm not a big fan of.
You just created compared H.R. Geiger to Todd McFarlane, and that's hilarious.
Because the Alien comics, that's a little different. His
or with Sam Keith, good God.
Even H.R. Geiger's work is objectively beautiful, but it's just not my.
Mobius did some of the designs for this movie.
I love Mobius now. I love Mobius. I do love Mobius, but I just said that 3 times. Maybe he'll appear.
Yeah, from the grave.
But so I was never really into Alien or Aliens, and it wasn't until like college that I finally watched like the first and second films, and I really enjoyed them. I was really surprised I liked them because it's not my type of movie. But then since then, they've kind of like out of my head. So then I rewatched them today, and we'll get to talking about that.
Yeah, it was really weird because they always kind of fell into like this void of like cliche from like old kind of like, I mean, it was 79, but I associate with kind of just like more schlocky 80s action movie type stuff.
Mhm.
And it's a complete disservice because especially with Alien, just it's got very, very heavy 2001 Space Odyssey vibes. Like, there's lots of long shots of like empty hallways in the spaceship.
You
and
really want
shots.
it to be 2001.
Yeah. Characters, just especially who's the captain of the mine vessel?
Dallas.
He almost just seems kind of like tired and lazy. Almost.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like he definitely like hasn't had his coffee throughout the whole movie.
Yeah. Well, they feel like real people, and I think that's really important.
They do. It's very like grungy, like lived in blue collar type thing because they're basically like space truckers. They're hauling a load of mining ore or whatever, and they get redirected because they have this distress signal they have to pick up. And, you know, you have the two guys there that are just complaining the whole time, like, oh, we're going to get paid more for this, right? You know?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we got to finish this repair. How long it's going to take? And it's like, well, 17 hours. And everyone's like, at least 22 hours, you know, kind of just milking it and gaming it every which way they can. And it's not, like, played up for laughs. I mean, it's played up a little bit for laughs, but it's not like, you know, kind of like a ha-ha, gotcha, one-liner type shit.
Yeah. It's really believable, which I think is part of the movie's strength is... It's a sci-fi horror movie, and like Fox greenlit this basically after the success of Star Wars.
Oh, really?
They were like, okay, we'll do another like space movie, even though this was nothing like that at all. And there's something really, really interesting and makes the movie creepier and more believable just having like all of these people on a big, elaborate spaceship, but they just wear regular clothes and they are regular guys.
Yeah, they're all wearing like jumpsuits and shit, you know, like.
Yeah.
Like maintenance.
Yeah, and they're all like talking about, oh, how much are we going to get paid for this? Or, oh, this food is garbage. It's like, and that was like a big thing that the producers wanted of like, let's do like truck drivers in space and none of this nerdy bullshit. And it really, really works.
Yeah. And it's only really two basic sets in the whole film, like the planet they go down to and then like the ship that they're on, but it still feels really, really lived in and developed and grounded, you know, quote unquote.
Yeah.
As much as you can say that for what it is, like the titular scene where the chest burster first appears, it's really kind of like disturbing and holds up really well today because when it starts happening, John Hurt's character, like they treat it as a seizure basically because he just starts spasming. You know, they get him on the table and they try to get a spoon in his mouth so he doesn't bite his tongue off, and they're holding him down, and it's really uncomfortable because if you've ever seen someone in real life succumb to a seizure or something awful like that, then that's what's happening. And then, of course, it takes a whole turn where his chest explodes and then
blood everywhere. It's great.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt that Veronica Cartwright had a panic attack.
So. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's one of those things you can really believe. Like, it holds up today, and I wish I could have been there when the theater like premiered because there's all the like, you know, hyped up stuff, like people were like vomiting in the theater and like running out terrified, and it's kind of believable because I can't really think of anything else comparable at the time that was happening in those type of movies that was built up so much because it's such a slow burn to get to that point. It's like what 40 minutes into the film that even happens.
Yeah. Both Alien and Aliens you don't really notice by the time you get to the end, but it's like. It's almost an hour into each movie before the shit and the fan really get acquainted.
Oh, yeah, it's crazy.
But, yeah, I mean, I would love, I agree, like, I would love to have been there and seen that in theaters for the first time, because it's like, even just the face hugger is fascinating, because you're like, what the fuck is this? It looks like a spider or hands or something just lashed on this guy's face, and you don't know what it's doing on there, and it bleeds acid, and you can't get it off. No, the whole movie is just really, really good. I've heard like some people maybe dip out there in the middle of the movie where it's like kind of just a slasher flick for a little bit, but I don't really agree with that. I think that so many of those sequences are great. Alien, weirdly, like any little criticisms I hear about it don't even matter to me. Because like when Dallas is climbing through the vents. You know, you get that shot of the alien where it's just like it spreads its arms.
Yeah,
I want a hug.
People think that that's really goofy, and I've always loved that shot.
That's a great fucking shot. Oh man.
Like ever since because it's one of the best attack shots of the alien in that movie, just because you barely ever see it on screen, and when you do, I'm just fascinated. I want to look at it more.
Yeah. They give it very few full body shots moving into it. A lot of it is really deep close ups of its face before it strikes, or it'll kind of trying to be looking like it's blending into the scenery or something.
Yeah.
See, I think with me watching it, like I said, growing up, I always knew what a xenomorph looked like. So the whole, I guess I'm kind of agreeing with you guys. I wish I could have been there, not knowing what I was looking at, because I know what a xenomorph looks like. It was really apparent to me on this rewatch, it was a guy in a costume. Even though they did everything in their power to hide that it was, and they did a really good job at that. And at the time, I'm sure it was great, but I'm spoiled with modern movie making, and I'm all for the Jaws and the Jurassic Parks hiding the scene footage. Just for some reason, I was really
you're one of those jaded millennial kids.
Yeah, and I was I could tell. I was and it just looked bad to me. There were things that looked good to me. I really liked the end scene when the xenomorph. Or wait, no, crap. Is this? I can't remember if it's Alien 1 or 2. They're kind of blending together. When the xenomorph is kind of in crouched in that compartment at the very end.
Yeah, that's the first one.
Okay, that is one. That's why I thought I doubted myself. So that looked really good to me.
Oh yeah.
Because it really blended really well with all the machinery. So it looked creepy, but there are a lot of the straight on shots like that one. It just looked bad to me.
I feel like there's only two shots that really stand out as being kind of cheesy and dated. It's the one where you see it fully standing up, and then it's
it's walking across the room
and they're getting the fuel cells or whatever the fuck for the escape ship. There was that one shot there, and then when it gets blown out the airlock at the end, it's it's just a guy in a suit. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's
the airlock thing looks bad. Other than that, I think the only real visual complaint that I have with the movie is when the Nostromo blows up.
They just went so hard. That thing blew up 3 times.
Yeah, it goes on. It just goes on and on, and that's the part.
Purple haze.
That's what reminds me the most of 2001. Not the set designs. It's just the psychedelic flash over and over. No, I do know it was definitely intentionally inspired by 2001. Ridley Scott. Huge Kubrick fan, but he also said that he wanted to set out to make the Texas Chainsaw Massacre of sci-fi movies, and I was
it's not really what it is. Though.
It's not. It's such a cool idea though. I'm just gonna do a really fucking. I mean, because at the time Texas Chainsaw Massacre was the scary.
Oh no, for sure, it was causing crazy waves. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was I liked the ambition of This was his second picture, and he was I'm gonna, because I guess a lot of the development of Alien is pretty interesting. The screenwriter Dan O'Bannon, he basically wrote this staying on his buddy's couch because he had no money. He was I gotta sell a screenplay so that I can eat. And I've been reading his original screenplay, but for a little frame of reference, Dan O'Bannon wrote and directed Return of the Living Dead. He's a schlock guy, and him and his partner working on the screenplay, they originally called the movie Star Beast, and they intended it to be a Roger Corman picture. They wanted to just sell it, and they're gonna make a goofy space movie off of it. And so it was the producers, Brandywine Productions. It was Gordon Carroll, David Giler, and Walter Hill. I can't remember who got a hold of the script first, but they read it and they got to the chestburster scene, and they were that's when they were showing it to their partners, and they were okay, so this is a really bad script, but it has one really cool part in it. And so then when they got to that, they were okay, yeah, we're gonna do something with this. And that's when they were okay, you got to change all the character names, and we're gonna make this way more realistic. And we're going to do truck drivers in space. Because Walter Hill, he's a director. The same year that Alien came out, he came out with The Warriors. But he's not a sci-fi guy at all. He worked on he co-wrote The Drowning Pool, which is based off a Ross McDonald novel. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that.
Talking about the bands, but okay.
No, not the band. Or like he co-wrote The Getaway for like Sam Peckinpah. Like he worked on like crime movies or like tough guy movies and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so like he had like no sci-fi influence on this, and he wanted to make like regular people. And I think that the producers were a big part of like saving this movie, because then when they were like shopping around for directors for it, they wanted to find somebody that was going to take it seriously. And I think that, like, I'm not a huge Ridley Scott fan, but I mean, he has two movies that I love, Alien and Blade Runner, and I think that, like, Alien was the perfect job for him, because he's really, really into, like, world building and exploring themes, and it's story that kind of falls apart for him, to me personally. And I think because Alien is such a simple story of like it's like a retro 50s B movie plot wise, but it's just so ambitiously made. Like just giving him that material and letting him run with it, like really, really worked. Because I mean, obviously, like Alien has a lot of like traumatic imagery, like it's a lot of like sexual violence imagery and stuff, and like like. There's the control room in the ship where they talk to Mother, and they called it like the womb room because it's like designed to be like this safe, encapsulating little room where you talk to Mother. And like even when they wake up out of the pods, like they have to adjust to being able to see and breathe, and it's like being born. Just a lot of imagery in the movie that I think like he was really able to run with, and it sticks to your psychosis while you're watching it, or maybe not for Michael because you didn't like it. But it's like a really well thought out, really well made movie.
Yeah, surprisingly grounded in a lot of ways. Like, when they're first landing on the alien planet, it's like very slow and taking forever. But then like they land kind of like slightly off kilter on a rock, and it just like fucks their whole landing craft up. Like to almost like borderline comedic extent now, because it's like you just see like the one landing foot come down and then like lands crooked, and then everyone in the ship on set is just like being jostled around, and like sparks are flying everywhere. You're like, oh, damn, wasn't that bad?
Yeah, no, I kind of love that though, where like it just feels believable. Of like, oh, we fucked up while parking, instead of it being like a huge like, and we crash landed on the planet.
Like, oh no, there's an ion storm, and now we're getting hit by electricity, and we're like skidding through like mountains, blowing through rubble, and then we're leaving like a 4-mile long crash path.
Yeah, it's like
oh no, we fucked up just landing a little bit.
Yeah, and they're like, yeah, we can fix it. This is going to take a few hours to do. So yeah, like I think Alien is really impressive for a lot of the crap that it just doesn't do. Like, I mean, reading the screenplay, like the original one that Dan O'Bannon wrote in like '76, I haven't fully finished it, but like, there's a lot of really bad, cheesy dialogue where you're like, what the hell is this? A lot of the names are really weird, and it's not super descriptive, but like during the chestburster scene, like they say like blood covers his tunic or something, and like it implies to me like, yeah, all of this like blue collar shit was added later, because like also in the script, like when they're hunting the alien, they're wearing like armored gear to like hunt it down and stuff, and I'm like, this just could have been a way different movie that would not have been as good. And I'm not trying to shit on the screenwriter, because I know like if like in context of like seeing a lot of the science fiction artists that he was a fan of, and like he was hoping would be able to, like in his dreams of dreams, be able to work on this project, like it could have been something cool, but it would have been something drastically different and not what we got, and what we got is way better.
I hate to say it, but they kind of like Christopher Nolanized it in a way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I completely agree with that. In fact, I feel like Alien is one of those movies that has huge shockwaves throughout. Of like, we just watched Annihilation earlier this year, and parts of that really remind me of Alien, like in terms of tone and stuff. I think that it really left a big impact on science fiction, and like basically saying this shit doesn't have to be nerdy. Because I mean, I guess Alien is nerdy, but it is and it isn't.
Yeah. I feel of all the movies, the first Alien is possibly like the least nerdy, because it doesn't have like, I mean, yeah, it has the world building, but it's still so small scale and like kind of like realistic and down. It doesn't like, there's not the escalation that you see in the other films outside of like maybe Alien 3, but that's whole other fucking conversation to get into.
That'll be a fun one to get into.
Oh boy.
But yeah.
What are your thoughts on Ripley as the main character? And just even the fact that, like, the film doesn't even have a main character for the first half.
Yeah.
Like, it takes a long time before it even settles into a main role for anybody.
I really liked that about it, because, I mean, like I said, I know about Alien, so I knew that Sigourney Weaver was the main character, but I love how the first movie, like, it took a long time for her to even really have a lot of screen time. Like, because with horror movies, it's like, oh, they're the main character, so they'll make it at least close to the end. So with that, it was like anybody could be dead at any moment, which was great, I thought.
Yeah, that's great too. And it even kind of plays her off in, I don't want to say villainous, but more of like a colder personality type. She's the one that's making the smart decisions.
She's the objectivist there. In fact, we'll get to this as we go along in the series, but I do want to point out now, writing that character now comes off very differently, because Vickers in Prometheus is kind of that character. Like, there's a scene where she's not going to let an infected person on the ship.
Yeah.
You know, but instead, like in Prometheus, she's like, it just ends in a flamethrower. Ripley is a very, very believable character. It's interesting because I always think that character hierarchy is like kind of fucks horror movies sometimes. Like, The Thing is damn near my favorite movie. I love it so much. But if I have one complaint, and this is really weird coming from me because I also love Kurt Russell, it's just, he's a little too obviously the main character. There's nothing with him that I would cut out, because I like the little chess game going on throughout the entire movie and everything. But it's like, you just want more of an even flow of characters so that you really don't know who's going to get it next. And I think that Alien does a really good job of that in the first half of the movie, especially. Like, I think that Ripley is always kind of clearly one of the main characters, just in terms of, because she's the one making like smart decisions, and she's often like questioning or being a counterbalance for Dallas. But there's also an argument to be made where like Dallas could almost feel like the main character at the beginning of the movie, just because he's the leader, so he's the one like talking the most for making these decisions. So it's like, it's really, really great that he kind of bites it third in the movie. Spoilers, by the way. But like, it's a really cool sequence too. And part of the fun about that is, aside from rescuing the cat, it's pretty much the only like selfless act that Ripley has, of where like she wants to be the one to go into the vents. Because Ripley is a drastically different character in the first movie. Like in the original script, the characters weren't written with gender specifics. Like, they had written them basically like they were all men, but they had a little caveat literally in the cast of characters portion of their script, where like, this cast is unisex and all of the parts are interchangeable for male or female. So like, and then Fox decided to make Ripley female. I think something about Fox movies, they were saying like, oh, we've been doing successfully with female leads. I never really looked into it though. Then they decided to go ahead with that, and Veronica Cartwright, who plays Lambert in the movie, was originally up for Ripley, and then Ridley Scott was like, no, let's get Sigourney Weaver because she's great. I don't know. But so like, Ripley's not really a hero character in the movie. She's a survivor. And I don't mean that as an insult or anything, because I think that the characterization of Alien is really, really good, especially like in terms of gender. There are some gender stereotypes where like Parker represents like a lot of masculine stereotypes. He's a very headstrong character. He's not going to draw straws for who makes it on the lifeboat. He's all for killing this thing and just fucking kill his friends. And Lambert is a little bit of like some negative female stereotypes where she's like frantic and afraid the whole time. And both of those stereotypes, in a weird way, I don't know if this was intentional or not, but they kind of lead to both of the characters' deaths. Where like, because they're the two of the last ones alive, and they're getting like those tanks and shit to go in the escape pod, and the alien comes into the room, and Lambert is just like overcome with fear, and she can't move. And Parker was going to blast it with a flamethrower, but he can't hit it without killing Lambert. So then he just gets into a fucking fist fight with the alien and dies. You know, and so it's like a really macho thing. And Ripley is a character that's not written with any real gender stereotypes. In fact, her gender doesn't really factor into her character a whole lot, except for like with Ash and like the magazine thing when he's cramming it down her throat. Or I guess you could say like, I mean, she wears underwear at the end of the movie, but it's not like super, not comparatively like.
I mean, it's got a bit of the male gaze, but it's not like, Michael Bay, Megan Fox level, hits you in the face. And it's really interesting, especially like the character of Ripley, how she doesn't fall into like a lot of the female or even male stereotypes. But the fact that so much of the monster seems to like be based on this whole like fear of like sexual assault and like rape and whatnot, do you think this movie would have worked the same way had it been like a male lead, or was it planned out from like the inception of the monster and how it attacks and feeds on people and impregnates them?
I don't know. I guess now I wish I did a little more research on Alien before jumping into this because I spent so much time with aliens. But like I'm pretty sure like Kane's character, who had a totally different weird ass name in the original screenplay, but like his character, I'm pretty sure was always intended to be male. And so there's like automatically something very disarming to people of like blatant face raping of a male character, and then he gives birth. That I think that was intentional of just like making like a male audience be subjected to that of like you're impregnated against your will by some alien species. And so I do think that it works better that the main character in the movie is female, just because like it really pays off in the sequel. I know that in ways that I'm very excited to talk about. But yeah, it just works well because Ripley is such a neutral and believable character in the first movie, where like you don't watch it, and at least for me, like sometimes when you watch a movie, like I've never had friends say "what a bitch." About like, you know what I mean? Yeah. Sometimes like, I just know a lot of guys who like whenever there's like a female character, they just get a little judgmental about it. I'm not like trying to badmouth all my friends or anything, but it's like sometimes they're just like
Zane, yeah.
No, I don't mean Zane. It's just like Ripley is a believable character, and she's always just making decisions where you're like, yeah, fucking listen to her.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because like when they didn't want to let the character who had the facehugger on him, like I was like, yeah, listen to Ripley, don't let him on the ship. But then I had to take a step back and think like if that was me in that position, I'd probably be more along the lines of what's the other female character's name?
Lambert.
Lambert, yeah. I'd probably be more on her side in real life, being like, no, like we got to help them.
Yeah, like, no, I think that. I think that all of the characters in this movie are actually fairly, like, they're well written.
You can identify really with everybody's opinion and point of view.
There's no character in this movie that I, like, don't like. I think they're all really well written. And I think that's, to me, that's why it's so great that Ripley is the main character and it's a female lead, is because there's nothing, like, there's no pageantry to it. They're not like trying to make it like, here's a badass space chick or anything. It's just like it's a believable character, and you get to enjoy it so much more. Because I guess what I'm trying to say is like I know like friends who when they see like an action movie or something with a female lead, they get really annoyed where they're just like, oh well, now she has to be the ultimate badass for women everywhere, and I'm like, I don't care. I'm still gonna watch Tomb Raider, but and so it's like I don't agree with that criticism, but I understand where it comes from. And Alien doesn't have that at all. These are just believable blue-collar people, and the main character is a woman.
Yeah. One last thing I feel like we should talk about is I don't know how intended it was, but it might have just been an idea they're kicking around, the alternate ending.
Oh, yeah.
For how they wanted to wrap it up. It would have basically destroyed everything that would just have aliens, just kind of kept this as like, oh, well, this is just a weird horror movie from like the late 70s. Had a really fucked up twist at the end. What I'm talking about.
I didn't know this. I'm excited.
Oh, okay.
I'm all excited right now.
So again, I don't know how much credit there is to it. I've heard like all around it might have just been like something they were spitballing in a writer's room one day, but One of the supposed original endings was when Ripley's escaping in the ship at the end after she's blown up the big mothership and whatnot, and the alien comes out. It's supposed to bite her head off, killing her, and then I think it sits in the chair or something, and like the ship's then on an approach to Earth, and then it speaks in her voice, getting access to like land.
Yeah, like I if I remember correctly, I think that you weren't like supposed to see it rip her head off. You were supposed to hear like at the end of the movie when she's like recording her like log. You're supposed to be hearing her voice and pan over, and like you would see that it was the alien talking.
So Annihilation heard that and took it and ran with it.
Yeah. And it's like that would have been a terrible ending because
it's also a misread of Annihilation's ending, but I'll let it see.
Because had Ripley died, it would have really compromised one of the best sequels ever made, Aliens, which is my personal favorite of the franchise and a movie I love so fucking much. So for anyone who doesn't know, Aliens is the 1986 sequel to Alien, written and directed by James Cameron. So Aliens picks up 57 years after the end of the original movie, where Ripley's ship is found floating through space, and then they bring her back to a gateway space station by Earth, and the company doesn't believe her story. They think it's a load of crap. They revoke her like flying status, and then eventually the colony, because apparently LV-426, the planet where they found the alien craft, has since then been colonized and is being terraformed by the Weyland-Yutani Corporation. When they lose contact with the colony, they ask Ripley to go with a group of colonial marines to find out what has happened. And
this time, it's war.
This time, it's war. That's the tagline for the movie. Because, spoiler alert, there's a lot of aliens this time.
And this
the S
couldn't be more like night and day different than the original Aliens. It still like has quite a slow build up to things going on.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel as, I don't want to say like drawn out, because that sounds like a bit of a negative, because I didn't think the original Alien was drawn out, but it certainly takes its time like establishing like the plot, the stakes, what's going on, how they got there. And I was watching the extended edition of it, and it's literally an hour and 15 minutes till you see the first fucking alien. Like, it's crazy, and you don't even really realize it.
No, I know.
You're just like that enthralled by like the movie and what's going on.
Yeah. That's actually exactly what I was gonna say. Is I think that pretty much every so we go from sci-fi horror to big fucking action movie. I think it's almost impossible to find a best action movie list without aliens. Without aliens being in like the top 5.
And there's still definitely like horror elements to it, but it's much more of like, tension based and stuff.
But it's just like it's widely considered to be one of the best action movies ever made, and once it takes off, it really, really, really it relentlessly takes off. But you don't really notice when you're watching it. At least for me, like there's no part of this movie that is boring to me. And so you're watching it, and it's over an hour before you actually see an alien in a movie called Aliens. But it doesn't bother me. I think it works perfectly well because the first half of the movie is building everything, and it's taking its time, and it's building up to something. And then the second half of the movie is just nonstop action. So when you walk away from that movie, you're not like, oh, that took a while before shit started. I don't think you ever really remember that. It doesn't really register. Because when I was a kid and I watched it, I was about 9 years old when I first saw it. I fell in love with it and I was obsessed with it, and I always just sort of associated it as they I always felt like maybe it was like 20 minutes before there was an alien showed up, because it just flies by to me.
It's one of those films like it just hit every note so well. It's basically, I feel like when most people think of the Alien franchise, they think of this movie. They think of aliens. They think of the colonial marines. They think of like the big crazy action fighting the xenomorphs, the big queen at the end. Like there's so much iconic imagery and action and set pieces that it really is just inseparable from like just the franchise when you think of it. It's what your mind first goes to.
I think that I don't want to say that it's underrated, but I think it's a little underappreciated. Like both of these two movies are generally loved.
Mm.
And I think that Alien is considered like the more art house film and like a smarter, quieter, scarier movie. And I'm not saying that isn't true.
Yeah.
Like I think Alien has better cinematography and it's more subtle, but I don't necessarily think that I don't think it's better. I think Aliens is kind of underappreciated in the fact that like it's this big action movie, but it definitely explores themes. And like I know a lot of people, justified criticism is that like Alien, the original movie, Alien is sort of a double entendre of like one, there's literally an alien, but it also is fear of the unknown because we don't know what this thing is or like how it got here, or what it came from, or what it's doing. And there's a deleted scene in the original where like Ripley runs into Dallas cocooned up on a wall, but that's cut. And the theatrical version is the better version. It's the definitive version. Fuck that scene. So for audiences, when all of these movies were released, Aliens actually introduces like the cocooning and everything. It introduces the queen. And so like I've heard people complain like they don't like the extension of like the xenomorph mythos because it's like, oh, now it just turns them into like ants basically, and it makes them less scary. It's like I don't really agree with that a whole lot. I get the complaint, and it's a justifiable complaint, I guess, but Aliens adds so much more to the lore than I think people remember. Because like the aliens in that movie, they're still scary. I mean, just because
there's more of them.
There's more of them. It's horrible, and maybe people are like, well, you see a bunch of them get shot down, that makes them a little less scary.
It's a bit inevitable to have them slightly quote unquote defanged, but it's also the context of the story where they're up against trained military personnel, not just a bunch of like blue collar workers that are trying to scrounge together whatever equipment they have on ship to try to fend this thing off.
They have more than a cattle prod and a flamethrower.
They had a net too.
And the Marines still had a hard time.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I don't think they were defanged at all.
No, one Marine survived.
Barely.
Yeah.
And not for long after, but
not for long after. Yeah, it's a really, really good movie. I'm not a huge James Cameron fan, but then like delving more into how this movie was made and everything that he went through, I'm becoming a bigger one. Like James Cameron to me is like one of those guys that I think he's really smart and creative, but not more than he likes money. You know,
he does like money. Yeah.
So it's like I think that's where his career has sort of gone. Of like, I'm gonna do what's ever gonna make the most money. But at the beginning of his career, he made really cool like action-packed sci-fi flicks, and Aliens. It's got themes that I think people don't really appreciate. Of like one, obviously it's a Vietnam War allegory, but two, like the mother relationship between like Ripley and Newt was always there from the beginning. It was always intentional. Like it was so like after Alien became like a big success, Brandywine Productions wanted to do a sequel right away. They had like a distribution agreement with Fox, and Fox was under new management, and that postponed a sequel to Alien until like 1983. So at the time, like James Cameron, they had gotten a hold of his script for Terminator, and he was writing like 3 screenplays at the time, like Terminator, Rambo: First Blood Part 2, and Aliens when he picked up that project. But like they had read his Terminator project, and they thought, oh, this is really neat. How would you like to work on a sequel to Alien? And so he had basically taken a short story of his called Mother, and then he wrote like a 90-page treatment or something, and he gave that to them. And they liked it so much that they were going to wait until he was available, like because he was like he was working on Terminator at the time, and they were like, we're going to go ahead and greenlight you as the screenwriter for this. And if the movie that you're directing does well, we're going to let you direct it. And from everything I can tell, Cameron had an astonishing amount of creative control on this project. And it all turned out for the best. I think that people kind of write it off a little bit as just being like big, dumb 80s action movie. And it's definitely in there, but it's not a stupid movie at all.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's
smart about it.
Yeah, it falls into like a lot of the cliches and tropes of making it bigger, making it louder, like escalating the scope as much as you can, but it never feels stupid. It never feels contrived to the point of like, well, that's just like it flows really well from like the point of the characters to the point of the action. Pretty much every regard.
Yeah, no, it's
There's
weird.
no Jurassic World.
No, I was just gonna say, Aliens does everything that I hate that movies do now. So it's baffling to me how like I love this movie so much. It's because I hate when you take a property and you like change the genre and you make it funnier and there's got to be bigger, louder action. And you just got to overblow the concept. And then you got to have like the shitty, cheesy human villain. This movie does all of those things, but I love it so much. In fact, Burke, I still have a few complaints about. I have very small complaints with Aliens. And I think the only two I can think of off the top of my head are Burke is still a cheesy, badly written character in a movie full of characters that I love. And then my other tiny complaint is the airlock sequence at the end is a little bit too much.
I mean, I wouldn't really call it like a complaint. It does harken back maybe a little too much to the first film in that regard.
Also, just a little bit of like how impractical it is, where like she's on this ladder, she flips that switch.
Oh no, for sure.
And then like she's like gotta get this thing off of her foot and suck it out into space.
The entire
and then she's gotta climb back up the ladder against the vacuum of space.
Yeah. And I was like, shouldn't the wind be sucked out of her lungs? Like,
the wind should be sucked out of her lungs. Fucking Bishop and Newt should just be slurped out into space because she's not like hold on to something. She's just like, fuck it.
Plus, like, why is that lever in that part of the tunnel? Like, there was a lot of like,
there's that lever there, but she has to go all the way back up top to close it.
It's science fiction. You come up with any bullshit you want from it. It's like, the pressurizing, destabilizing field that they had over it negated the effects of whatever. Fuck you, it's sci-fi,
and that's why I can overlook it. Yeah, it was like for a second, I'm like, wait, what?
I can overlook it. It's just like if I'm being honest of like complaints that I have with the movie, it's Burke and that part, particularly her climbing up the ladder to shut the door, is like,
I don't know. A lot of the dialogue, I know it's supposed to be like cheesy and like 80s style ham-fisted, but it is borderline cringeworthy in multiple scenes. And
example, because I love the dialogue of this movie.
Anytime Hudson opens his mouth,
he's the best.
I mean, I love Bill Paxton, but it just kind of grates a little bit against some of the more serious elements of the film.
Hudson is so great.
Yeah,
I love that. Boom! Stop your grinning and drop your linen. I found him. I'm like, this guy's wonderful.
Oh my God,
he's great.
Him and his team of ultimate badasses.
Yeah, he rules, dude. But I mean, that helps tie in with like the Vietnam War allegory of like you have these soldiers that are overly confident of like we're a bunch of badasses we're technologically superior to our enemy that we're going to face, and we're going to like so part of the reason why I think that Aliens works as a Vietnam War allegory is because it's not really offering you a it's not really like particularly blaming or excusing anything because it's like these colonial Marines are sent there with an incompetent military leader and with a very like corporate agenda, and then they're fighting like I guess like an allegory for communism. You could make the argument of like a hive-minded like alien race, but like to them like the corporation behind it doesn't really have a very noble agenda and like their military leaders aren't super competent. And the Marines aren't really written as like good or bad, like they're arrogant and they're like really broy and pigheaded, but they also do think that they're there to like help innocent people, and it's like that's something interesting about it. Like I remember I was watching a video on YouTube by The Long Take where it was like talking about how Aliens is it's not blatantly saying it, but it's like it's talking about how Aliens is essentially right-wing propaganda, and I don't think so. Like some of the arguments were like saying that it sort of reaffirms, it sort of comforts America over the Vietnam War, like saying like, oh, the Marines could have won, but they weren't really able to, like they held back or something, and like talking about how it doesn't blame capitalism, it just blames Burke as an individual, because they were like, the corporation in this movie isn't actually like evil. They're not saying, oh, Ripley, we don't care. They're just saying we don't believe you because this sounds ridiculous.
Yeah, well, they are evil because in the first movie they said, oh, all the people are expendable.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, if you take it alone in the context of this film itself, like it doesn't vilify the Weyland-Yutani Corp outside of just like Burke is a proxy for it.
And I do have to agree, like both movies are extreme products of their time, where like 70s cinema was a lot more dark and cynical. This was like post-Vietnam, post-Watergate, and a lot of them were really anti-establishment movies. So, and it just fit in with Alien of like, these characters are abandoned out in the darkness of space, and it's like the company that they work for doesn't care about them. They're like completely closed off and alone. And then in Aliens, the 80s was a more like conservative time. You got the Reaganomics and shit. But I just don't see it as right-wing propaganda. I think that, like, I would agree it doesn't really make the corporation an outright bad guy so much as Burke as an individual. And I think that Burke is a really flawed character, but it does something great of, it helps save the story. Because Ripley comes out of cryosleep 57 years later, and then she has to go back because after 57 years, these colonists are being attacked. But you find out that happens because Burke assigned somebody to go investigate and find this ship. Burke sent people out there, and it's like, that is just better screenwriting than it just being happenstance or something. It works better. And as much as I hate Burke as being like a little too unbelievably cartoonish of a villain, you get a really great sequence out of it where he like sets the facehuggers loose. And it's like one of the best parts of the movie.
So that was a lot of fun.
So all of my complaints with Aliens, I take with a grain of salt.
Well, speaking of that scene with the facehuggers and Burke, after that, one thing that always kind of struck me as a bit odd, like Ripley is just like straight up like fire and brimstone against him. It's like Burke planned this, and like he was planning to like jettison all you guys, the rest of the surviving Marines, out into the deep space and call it like a malfunction and smuggle it back home. But did she ever really have any proof of any of that, really, outside of just suspecting that like this must have been Burke? Because
I don't know.
I don't know.
It's
if the guy
such a
did try
weird
to do
scene.
that to me, I would be the same way.
Well, no, for sure. It's a weird scene, but she's just so specific about his master plan.
I think
what?
Also, what I really hate about that is then she's like, I don't know which species is worse. And then they're like, dude, let's fucking kill him. And she's like, no, he has to go back. And I'm like, no. No, he doesn't.
It's like,
Hudson put it beautifully. You're dog meat, pal. That's just a little weird to me because it's like I get that Burke is like this sleazy opportunist, and I think that all of that is fine. Where it's like, oh, I sent people out there to investigate this because I wanted to be able to sign off on this and then get like a finder's claim, and it's like all of that is understandable. It just goes like a little too far when like this weaselly opportunist completely tosses aside his sense of self-preservation. Where it's like, I'm going to fucking kill more people, the only people that are able to help me on this planet full of fucking monsters, because I want to bring them back. It's like the Weyland-Yutani Corporation's interest in the aliens is one of those things that gets more and more ridiculous with each movie.
Oh, no, for sure. But this one's still very much somewhat grounded in their own believability. And to Burke's I can't believe I'm saying this. To Burke's defense, like, Ripley and whatever the little fucking girl's name was. Newt. Yeah, they were asleep, so I think the whole thing was like, oh, they'd be passed out. They wouldn't even realize the facehuggers are on them. They'll be impregnated, and then they'll wake up a few hours later, and then they'll be thrown in cryo, whatever. Or I'll be like, oh, it was an accident. So I do see like the logic of that there, but it does definitely tread the line of going into contrived, like, evil villain. Oh, man's the worst enemy in the end, isn't he?
Yeah, it's just, like, movies do that a little too often for me. It's always, like, a huge bug up my ass of, like, seeing a movie where it's like, you don't need that. Like, I don't, it works fine.
Bug up that.
Yeah, it works fine in Aliens, and it works great in Alien. but it's a little much. Like by the time you get to like Jurassic World or something, I just go, oh, I hate having the human bad guy. It's one thing that I love about The Thing. They don't do that. But yeah. So a little bit of the development of this movie. I guess we've been talking. Sigourney Weaver is weird. Sigourney Weaver is really, really weird. In that I was listening to the commentary with James Cameron, and he was talking about like all of the ideas that she had that she wanted. Well, I guess first I should mention he wrote this screenplay that all centers around her character. Yeah. And this is the transition where Ripley goes from a regular person to, for my money, the best like cinematic heroine in movies. She emerges completely as a hero, and the whole screenplay was framed around that. And Fox greenlit it, and they did it before they made a deal with Sigourney Weaver. And so Sigourney Weaver wanted a lot of money to do this after the fact, and they didn't want to pay her that, and they asked James Cameron to rewrite his script so that it wouldn't focus on Sigourney Weaver, and he was like, no. The whole thing is like framed around this mother-daughter relationship and all of these themes of like motherhood, and especially to me, like Alien is fear and trauma, and this is like sexual trauma pretty much, and Aliens is a cathartic recovery. So it's like the first half of that movie, like Ripley has trouble sleeping, and her whole life has been shattered by this traumatic experience. And in this movie, she's going back and she's facing it. And he was really smart to not change any of that, because it's like you're talking about cheesy lines of dialogue, and like obviously the most famous and quotable line of that movie, like "Get away from her, you bitch." I love that line, and I was watching it last night, and I was just thinking, God, this is as corny as it is. This is the fucking moment. Like I think that scene rules, because it's like the fucking doors come up and she's in that power loader suit and the light is behind her, and then she just steps up to the camera and she's like, "Get away from her, you bitch." And she's saying that to like the biggest, meanest, smartest version of an alien that we've seen yet, and they've been completely fucking her existence for the course of 2 movies now. Yeah. And she's like, "I'm gonna fucking crush you, you piece of shit." It's so good. I love it so much.
Everything about that is just so iconic in so many ways. Like down to the fucking Reebok she's wearing in that.
Yes. It's so good.
And it could have just been played off in so many like less memorable or cheesy ways too, especially for like the ending like one-liner kind of thing. But it works so well because it's with the established themes of the movie. It's within the context of the character, within the context of the story. All of it comes together. It's almost like
even the fucking power loader is set up earlier in the movie.
Yes, it's not just like, oh hey, she just like looks over to the side and like sees someone's like, oh, and then the next thing she just shows up and all of a sudden
it establishes earlier that is a thing on this craft and she knows how to use it.
Like movies nowadays need to look to this film and be like, this is the right way, not only to do like a big dumb action movie.
It's almost like they made a movie because they had something to say.
Yeah, like to do a sequel. Because I was really surprised. I was telling Kyle earlier, like I was fully expecting to prefer Alien to Aliens.
I thought you would too.
Because I usually like more like conceptual, scaled down stories.
I don't know why, but I really expected you to like Aliens more. But
well, you were right. One, because I really ended up enjoying Aliens a lot more, and I think it's because like it really took the themes, not necessarily the themes, but like a lot of the ideas and things from Alien and amped them up, but not in the terrible way like we keep mentioning Jurassic World and movies like that, where it added a lot to the lore and the world that was for the better, and like. It was just because of the 80s action schlockiness, like it was a fun ride, and like there was a lot of fun moments, and there was a lot of like the horror too was amped up a lot more.
I think that it's definitely less of a horror movie, but that's something that like people almost think that there's no people treat it like there's no horror to it. I think when the Colonial Marines first get on LV-46, it's so good. Like I love them like. Going through all the corridors and seeing like the aftermath of something horrible, and then they're like going in those like tunnels with all this like weird bullshit on the walls, and then the weird bullshit turns into like corpses cocooned
the
up.
escalation of that whole scene is just astounding because it sets it up what they can do, and then it slowly like strips them away, puts them out of their element. They can't use most of their weaponry, and
it utilizes like the aliens blending into their environment really well.
Oh my goodness!
Like just watching a lot of them like slither around. Like I've heard a lot of people complain about like sort of the opposite of Michael, of like complaining like Aliens just shows you a bunch of guys in rubber suits and it looks bad. And it's like, I don't agree with that. I think that there are a few shots here or there where there are like dummies set up or like guys jumping around, but I think for the most part, Aliens looks phenomenal.
I think Aliens does. Alien was the one that drew more of my attention to the rubber suits. Aliens.
Most people say the opposite, but
I think. Oh, for me personally, like Aliens, there's so much more to it, and so much more that it's doing, especially with the creatures. I think when they try to like attack or they're doing like fast movements, it kind of looks dated. Outside that, you can tell it's people in rubber suits. What looks astounding is when they're kind of like assimilated into the background, when they're like slithering through that. One of my favorite shots of probably the entire fucking franchise is when Newt is down below in the sewers and they're trying to cut her out, and then you see the xenomorph slowly rise up out of the water with its tail waggling and everything. And it's so fucking perfect. Like, it's astounding.
That's a great shot. I think there are a lot of great creature shots. Like, I like when they're getting into the I don't know, like fucking truck or whatever, and like the alien like wraps its hands around the door and is like pushing its face forward before it eats a shotgun barrel. I think that looks really good.
Yeah.
I think that the one when Hicks and Ripley are on the elevator and they're like trying to close the door and one just like sort of like skitters like there and like grabs hold of the doors. I think that's a really, really good shot.
Yeah. See, everything with the Queen for me was perfect.
Yes. It looks great.
Yes. That whole segment, I think I would go so far as to saying, outside of like the very last scene when it's like blown out the airlock and its legs are going,
and when it realizes how to use an elevator, that was a little weird.
That was fine.
That was totally fine. I would go so far as to say everything with the Queen and the Power Loader battle like holds up exceptionally well with anything that's done today. It's
especially like sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I've been like listening to the commentary and stuff on this and learning about so many of the like low budget, like cheap tricks that they use to make this movie. There's a lot of rear projection, and like a lot of reverse photography. And the power loader suit is just a guy, like a bodybuilder inside this suit and Sigourney Weaver like on top of him. And it's just a big guy moving this thing around. And it looks really fucking good.
Oh
like,
my goodness.
I never would have guessed that had they not told me, because it looks like a machine.
No, absolutely. Like, especially like the scenes where like Newt is hiding in the grates below and the Queen alien is like ripping him off and the claws are coming down, like grabbing at her. Like, it's insane. Like, it's so believable. It's intense. Like, it looks better than any movie from that time. I feel like has a right to look. It looks better than movies currently look with a lot of a lot of the ways they handle special effects and stuff. And a lot of that is attributed to James Cameron, like kind of getting to start doing like lower, like B tier kind of schlocky horror films and stuff. I think he worked with Roger Corman for a while too.
He worked with Roger Corman. He worked with John Carpenter for a while. Like he was part of the like visual or set design for Escape from New York, and that's another gorgeous movie. So it's like he really put in a lot of his time, like learning how to do so many great things. And I do attribute a lot of it specifically to Cameron. I'm not a big fan of his, but everything that I've like learned about making this movie, like he didn't get along with the British crew very well, and a lot of them like hated him because they were big fans of Ridley Scott and they didn't know who this guy was. Terminator hadn't come out in England at the time, and he tried to have screenings for them, and they refused to go. And I know like a lot of specific technical ideas were like his idea, like and he was a workaholic that really pushed to make this movie and made it look great. And it's a little sad to hear him say, like, towards the end of his commentary track, he was saying that he thinks that now a lot of the filmmaking techniques, the movie looks dated and crude. But he did say, like, he thinks it's the best story that he's told. And I agree. I think it's his best script. But just some of, like, hearing him say, like, oh, well, now we could have just made a beautiful digital alien queen. I'm like, that's a horrible thing to say because one, Stan Winston fucking rules, and that's one of his best things. Like Stan Winston in his commentary track, he's like, he said that that's his favorite movie that he's done.
Mm.
And I think that that's incredibly fair because it's some of his best fucking work.
Yeah. I literally can't say enough good things about the Queen and the special effects used to employ it. Like, there are definitely some other dated shots, and not just like with the xenomorphs. There's some really bad like composite shots in it, where it's like there's a background explosion, and it's very clearly like just kind of like on a screen, and the actors are acting in front of it. But I mean,
yeah, there's a lot of rear projection, but there's more than I thought. There's one that I actually think looks really good. Is this might have even been the scene that you're talking about. I don't know, but I think it looks good. Is when the dropship crashes.
Oh, that's like exactly one of the scenes I was talking about.
I think it looks good. I think it looks really good.
I feel like they just didn't bother, like when they re-released it, to do any color correction with like the background versus like the foreground because it looks so like obviously like differentiated from each other.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's just kind of like
there's also one that I think doesn't look great, but when you consider that it's just rear projection, I think still looks pretty good. Is there's a shot of the alien queen. There's like one shot of her that's rear projection, and the only reason why I think it looks bad is just because the value differences are so obvious. Like there's too many dark shadows in the foreground, and there's like fire going on, so they try to hide it with that. But all of the dark shadows on the alien queen are just a darker orange, and it doesn't quite match up, but for the most part, it looks pretty good. But yeah, and one thing that I was saying is like it was so good that they got Sigourney Weaver. I mean, I think it's important to note that Aliens was nominated for 7 Academy Awards.
Holy fuck!
It was nominated for 7. Including Sigourney Weaver for Best Actress.
Wow.
In 1986. And she got the money that she asked for. She got $1 million, which was pretty unheard of at the time. It's like, I think it's like $2,300,000 by today's standards. And she got $1 million out of an $18 million budget. She got a big slice of this pie.
Yeah.
And it was worth it. She became an iconic character. Was nominated for an Academy Award in a genre that even today doesn't really get that kind of recognition. And then it also won a Hugo Award and 8 Saturn Awards. Like, Aliens actually has a lot more prestige than I think people remember.
Oh, yeah,
it's a really fucking well-made movie, and it was recognized as such at the time. I think it was like an $18 million budget, and I think it made $180 million by the time it came out. So it really really paid off. It was a really good movie. Trying to think of what else I want to say about it. I mean, there's more to talk about, but we're kind of running low on time, and it was like not.
Yeah. So, Michael, you said like this is kind of like you revisiting it and not having it be a big part of your life or a big part of your mindset. Now going back and rewatching these so recently, just what are your thoughts as part as like, do you see why it's kind of like a legacy type series?
Oh yeah. I definitely understand why people have so much love for it. I mean, even with me not being that invested in the franchise, like everything's just so beautifully put together. You could tell if there's like love and care in all like both of these movies. And there's definitely a lot that works and still does to this day better than movies that think that they're better than Alien. But I mean, for me personally, still like it still hasn't like captured that like thing. It's like, oh man, I love this movie. Like I definitely appreciate both of these movies. Especially Alien 2 was a fun ride.
Aliens, Michael.
Yeah. And it definitely has me excited, though probably misplaced excitement to see Alien 3.
Yeah, it's going to crunch your nuts real hard.
Yeah. How are they going to top what they did in Aliens?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but you know, like, sorry, I just remembered that I forgot to mention, like, Aliens does still carry over, like, some interesting gender themes. Like, and this was something that the conservative propaganda, the long take video, pointed out was, like, it's feminist, but, like, in a comfortably conservative way. Like, he was saying some things that I don't agree with, where, like, Ripley, like, he was talking about how Ripley was a woman that chose her career over her family, and then the movie, like, tries to fix that. And that the alien queen is supposed to be a representation of conservative fear of feminism because it's a female that can reproduce without any male interference.
Oh my god!
Like, I don't agree with any of that.
No.
But it does have interesting things like that it does with gender in this movie because Ripley is a strong hero character, and it is explored in genuinely like really feminine ways of like what was conventionally feminine at the time of like thinking of women as like mothers and stuff. It was like in a predominantly male genre, the action genre of the 1980s. The best one, pretty much with the highest marks, stars a woman, and it's a lot of the action frames around her being a mother trying to rescue a little girl, and it also kind of like switches some of the gender stereotypes, the few that are in Alien, of like having a scared woman and a headstrong man. You get the opposite of that in this movie where you have Vasquez as sort of like the, no, these fuckers killed my friends, I'm going to destroy these motherfuckers. And Hudson, who's like, game over, man. And I mean, Hudson, even on his own, is just kind of a great character in that at the beginning, he's the embodiment of like this egotistical male, like, we're the ultimate badass squad. And he's like roasting people with sick burns and like, and like heckling the drill sergeant and all of that. And then Hicks is kind of underrated. Like he's not a super overly written character.
I mean,
but there are little things that he does that I like.
My favorite thing about Hicks is how he's asleep during the initial.
Yes,
that's great because like the commanding officer, he's like a real like wet behind the ears, like it's his second combat drop ever. He's like cold sweat, kind of freaking out, and is like, Hicks fucking asleep right now, and he's just like zoned right the fuck out, just like snoring away.
And like there's a little touch that I didn't notice probably like the first several times I saw this movie, but when Newt first appears, it's pretty obvious now. I don't know how I didn't notice it, but like when Newt first appears, you know, like all the Marines have those like tracking devices, and they just see movement, and this little girl skitters across, and Drake is like shooting at her. The first few times I watched that movie when I was a kid, I thought that they all shot at her. I never realized like Hicks saw that it was a kid, and he uses his gun barrel to move Drake's gun barrel out of the way, and I was like, that's a nice little touch. Hicks is he's kind of maybe written as the only like good Marine.
In another movie, he could have very easily been the hero of the story. Yeah, he
could have easily been the hero. I'm glad that he isn't, because he really works great as the number one guy that you would want to be there with you. And I think that that's what him and Bishop are like the two most useful characters of like they're level-headed and they're like calm under fire and they do a good job. One other little thing about the extended edition of the movie, I would recommend, if you haven't seen it, definitely watch that. Just because the only thing that I would leave out of the extended edition really is just seeing Newt's parents go to the ship. I would even keep the rest of the colonist stuff, because like James Cameron had to cut out a good solid 20 minutes of that movie, and they took out an entire reel. They took out all of the Hadley's Hope colonist stuff. I would have left a little bit of that in, but I think it's really important to leave in all of the stuff about Ripley's dead daughter.
And see, I didn't see that version, so I didn't know.
Yeah, it's a.
Oh wow.
I don't think that you 100% need it to get the mother-daughter themes, but it does add something in there.
It's a great character moment for Ripley.
Yeah, and I also would leave the smart guns in, because I don't think that it bogs down the runtime. I think that actually makes everything feel even more tense.
No, it's a very tense scene.
Just because, like, seeing all of the, like, and I mean, this is on the pulse rifles, too, which are the coolest fucking guns in movie history, and I want one so bad. But you just see, like, the countdown of the ammo, and seeing that on the smart guns, like these sentry guns outside of where they're walled up, and they just go down more and more and more and more and more, and it's, like, such a cool sequence. And then, like, they start going down to zero, and then there's one gun that has 10 rounds left, and Hicks, like, grabs his rifle and is going to run, and then, like, Ripley stops him, and it's like, they were testing him out, and they left, and it's like, well, the next time they come, they just knock on the door, and it's like, they don't know that. And it's just, like, a great little moment in the movie that I think is, like, really tense and helps add to, like, the intelligence of these creatures, and, like, everything they're testing out. And it helps explain a little further why they don't just, like, acid their way through the door or something. When you see them, like, crawling up on the ceiling, which is, again, one of my favorite parts of the movie. I think my favorite shot in the whole movie, if not the whole franchise, is just having that red room and then Michael Biehn with that blue light, and he, like, pushes the panel up with his gun barrel, and he's just looking and you see like because he's got a big bug-eyed guy anyway, and he's like looking around, and then you see those aliens like crawling up there. Oh, that looks so cool.
Oh, that is a fantastic shot. Yeah.
And another little cheap effect that works really well in that scene is like this red lit room, and they were just like they had like strobe lights going off screen to like mimic the gun flashes and just help add like a kinetic energy to that scene. That works really, really well. It's such a great. Aliens is such a fucking good movie. Michael, I can't believe how underwhelmed you are by it.
I wasn't underwhelmed. I was whelmed.
Fuck you,
wow.
Young Justice quote piece of shit.
Yikes. All right. So, closing thoughts. You preferred Aliens to Alien, Mike?
Yes, but I would definitely recommend checking out both to see how you feel about them because they're both wonderful films.
Great movies that you don't like.
Yeah. I just have the wrong opinion about most things.
Yeah.
But I think everyone should definitely watch both.
They should be required watching.
Yeah.
If I ever take over the world, you have to learn these. It's cool.
Yeah. You're still big on Aliens over Alien, Kyle?
I am. Every time I think I'm going to go back on it. Like every time I watch Alien, I'm like, no, that one's the best one. This one's great. And then I watch Aliens, and I just have to admit to myself that I've loved that movie since the moment I saw it, and I've never stopped loving it. There has never been a point in my life where that hasn't been amazing to me. It still is. It's just so good, and it works. I think it works on more levels. I think that Alien is like probably an objectively better, tightly wound, cohesive, original story, but Aliens, it doesn't matter what mood I'm in to watch it. I don't need to be like in a horror mood or anything in particular. Or I think like it's a movie that I could just show anybody. Like it was one that I saw it when I was in the 4th grade, and I would like take that VHS tape with me everywhere. Try to get friends to watch it with me. It's just I just have too much of a close attachment to that movie.
Yeah. I definitely love both these films a tremendous amount, but I think I still have to say I prefer Alien over Aliens. Not that I think one is a worse film than the other.
Sure, it's apples and oranges.
It really just comes down to personal preference and whatnot. Like Aliens is just that like warm, comfy blanket you can just pull on and just enjoy. It doesn't affect me as much as when I was a kid because like I remember seeing it when I was like 8 or 9, and like it was scary as fuck to me then, especially like the whole scene where they go and everyone's cocooned, and that opening segment. Well, not opening because it's halfway through the fucking movie.
But it feels like the opening.
It does feel like the opening. The first scene, their first contact scene with the xenomorphs. That's I still remember like how terrifying that was to me as a kid. And the movie has lost, because you know what's going to happen. Setup. I still appreciate.
Plus, you're older.
These things don't affect me as much. I still really appreciate it, and the special effects are amazing. But something about like the isolation and just dour nature and methodical plotting of the original Alien really gets me still. I remember I rewatched it in preparation for talking about this because I watched it about a year ago, and I was like, I'll put it on and maybe I'll pull out my 3DS or do something in the background while it's on, and I didn't. Like my phone was down. I didn't fuck around with anything else. I was just like watching the whole thing from beginning to end because it's still like holds up to the point where it just entrances me and I want to just watch the damn film. Oh
yeah, for sure. I every time I sit down and watch Alien, I think, well, it's going to be kind of long and drag a little. And then when I watch it, I'm like, no, this is an amazing movie, and I always forget how good it is, but I always go on about how good it is.
I think the difference for me between the two is Alien's one of those films, I start watching it, I don't want to stop until it's over. Whereas Aliens, I feel like I can pick that up at any point and just watch a scene and just love it. It's a much easier, more accessible film in that regard. And that's really cool, and it's really great. And I know you talked, you mentioned the Vietnam War and all those other parallels and things you can interpret and read into that. The thing that's really great is you don't even need to even bother to acknowledge that to begin with because it's just a fun
I didn't know any of that shit when I was 9.
Yeah, exactly. Like I didn't even really make any of those connections till you mentioned it earlier, and I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, but it's not like in any way preachy or
not at all. It's not a didactic movie.
It doesn't feel like it has an agenda.
No, it doesn't.
Even with a female action hero character, it doesn't feel like it's jamming it down your throat because it feels like a natural progression of her character from the end of Alien to being a kick-ass action woman.
It really, it's just a good idea to maybe explore themes with your characters sometimes or give them an arc.
Yeah.
I don't know. Call me old-fashioned. No, I agree. It's weird to me still that I like Aliens more because Alien is more the kind of movie I like. Small, low scale, depressing, dour, bleak shit, and I like Terminator more than Terminator 2. I'm usually pretty out on bigger, louder sequels. Aliens is maybe the only one that I like better. I think.
Yeah.
Might be the only sequel I like better than an original. I don't know.
Really? No. Well, Dark Knight, but
oh yeah, Dark Knight, yeah.
Fuck that movie. But yeah. Anyways, that's pretty much our closing thoughts on the series, and join us next time, sometime in the near future, hopefully.
Anyway,
as we'll get to in our next segment, going over the next films in the series. How do you improve on perfection? And
yes, I cannot wait to talk about Alien 3. I can't wait to watch. Mike, I want to watch it with you.
Okay, we'll watch it.
I want to see you see this movie.
We should just do like Instagram Live, and it'll just be like your reactions watching that film.
I can't wait. I'm really excited about.
Oh my gosh!
After hearing everything you guys have said about it.
Yeah. I hate to say that it's all downhill from here, but
it is.
Well, then we get to Prometheus, and it's
fucking
like
shut up.
All right, we're turning this off.
WolfPunch.